Ciao amici e benvenuti nella Peso sulla Luna. Hello friends, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you probably understood from that kind of Italian introduction to this video that this is my series in which I use Tarot de Marseille adjacent or antique Italian decks to help me unpack the larger spread that I do every week. And for the last 2 lunar cycles, I've been using a very deep, complex, intricate spread, which is based on the Tree of Life. And I call it my Tree of Life spread. And I just did a 2-part read of that spread for this week. The spread asks me to do the reading in 2 parts because otherwise one video would be just too long. So I do it in 2 parts. And so I've been taking advantage of this third opportunity to examine the spread to get a consolidated message. Now, just in case you have not seen the large spread videos, I will put a link to part 1 up here so that you can go back and take a look at that. So you understand where we're coming from, what the environment is that we are reading from. And in case you have seen both part 1 and part 2 and want a quick refresher, let me remind you that this week's larger spread began with the King of Discs reversed. And it seemed to indicate the waiting in the wings of a sense of overwhelm, either from good things or not so wanted things. It could be from things that we've wanted and we've just received too much and we feel overwhelmed, or we feel like we've been burdened by other people, or there's been one or many large negative feeling events which have given us which can give us a feel of overwhelm. But that overwhelm has not arrived yet. The first spot of the spread that I read, the Tree of Life spread, is something that we are not yet aware of, something that is pre-conscious. So that's where we started. The pre-conscious element that we're working from for this week was that imminent sense of overwhelm. And then we worked through the spread and we landed on Pisces, where we were asked to again reconsider or to consider our emotional state. Are we creating problems that don't exist? Are we being overly sensitive? Are we being reactive? How are we working with our emotional lives, if that makes sense? So that's where we started. That's basically the spread. And we had a lot of powerful, positive stuff in between those two, yeah? We had the Empress, we had a lot of powerful creativity in that spread. Between that sense of imminent overwhelm and perhaps our hyperreactivity. So every week I pull cards answering the same question. And that question is, what is the central message of this week's Tree of Life spread? Because like I said, it's a doozy. And so having a concise message from that spread is really, really helpful. And I got a really, really helpful response, I think, from these cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the question, all typed out nice and pretty, but very short, because we've been using the same question every week for the last 6 or 7 weeks now. And then I'll show you the cards, and then we'll come back and talk about them. So here we go. That was a mess of cards, right? I usually do a 3-card spread, the intent is to do a 3-card spread when I answer the question, what is the central message of this week's Tree of Life spread? But the first card I laid, and it actually made me very happy to see, was the King of Discs upright. Of course, all of these cards are upright because I don't shuffle in reversals to the Tarot de Marseille decks that I use for this series. So this King of Discs, which was the first card of the Tree of Life spread, appeared in the first spot for me. And I laid them left to right as I usually do. I laid the King of Discs, then the Four of Discs, and then the Seven of Discs. All discs, right? All about the physical, the monetary, the financial, the health, the stability, physical stability. But then I noticed that the king is looking off to the left, right? The left, right? Is looking off to the left. And so I thought, okay, let's see what the king is looking at, because that's how I jam with Tarot de Marseille readings. I look at the line of sight. And so I pulled another card, and it was the King of Wands, as you saw, also looking to the left. And so I thought, okay, so you really want me to push this a little bit farther, don't you? And I pulled the fifth card, which was the Four of Swords. And I thought, okay, this is a natural stopping spot. So how are we going to read this? The first card, I think, is because it was the first card of the larger spread that we are trying to synthesize, and it was the first card as I laid the three-card spread, I think that is the central message here. That is the core of the spread. It's a reminder of where we're beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that card, and then we're going to look at what this king is bringing with him, her, them. Yeah? What is behind? What is supporting? What has this king been through and is carrying forward? And then we'll look at where this king is headed, what this king is putting his, her, or their attention on. Because remember, we are all kings. Whether we're in male bodies, we're in female bodies, we're in non-binary bodies, we're in transgendered bodies, we're in intersex bodies, whatever kind of body we are all kings, we're all queens, we're all knights, we're all pages, right? So, this king is, then we're going to look again at where this king is looking and where this king is moving towards and what's on his, her, their mind. That makes sense, right? So, let's start off with that King of Discs, this beautiful King of Discs. Very, very symbol, meaning rich card, I think. And when I think of the King of Discs, I mean the colors, I love the colors of this deck. By the way, this is a deck called, I didn't mention that, this is a deck called the Naibi di Giovanni Vacchetta. Yeah? And this version of that deck is from Il Meneghello. They put out magnificent cards. They put out magnificent decks. The corners are sharp, but the cards are easy to shuffle. Frankly, not all of their decks are easy to shuffle, but this deck is very easy to shuffle. It's a beautifully colored watercolor repainting and redrawing of the original. It's just stunning, I think. It's a phenomenal deck to use. And so, again, we've got this King of Discs here. And when I think of the King of Discs, I think of abundance, I think of prosperity and security. I think of the person who is able to provide for themselves and others. This is a protector, a physical protector, and a person who is able to reach for and attain success. Now, this person earns comfortably, with pleasure. This person enjoys the work that they do. They're cautious, but optimistic as well. And they have a vision of where they're going in the world. Perhaps not the long-range vision of a King of Swords, perhaps, but they have vision, a practical vision. And they're looking for new achievements, new ways to create in the world, while maintaining what they already have. Now, they're not completely stuck in the mud kind of conservative people. They're not unwilling or unable or uninterested in moving forward. They want to move forward while maintaining what they already have. Yeah? Very stable, positive way of being in the world. Which is interesting because remember, we got the King of Discs reversed in the larger spread, where we got the sense of overwhelm, of too much, of people asking for too much. Here we've got the upright version. And I think we want to read this as the upright version because the core message is not to be overwhelmed, but to own our inner King of Discs. And you'll also notice that this King of Discs may not look all that happy. If you look at this card a little bit more closely, and hopefully you'll be able to see it clearly here, this king looks a little bit like a tax collector, doesn't he? Now there's this large box rather than a table in front of him, her, or them. They've got the royal seal, and it looks like a ledger there beside. I mean, it's not a ledger. They've got coin there beside them, and they're looking up at this, right? So one way to read this, or probably the intended way to read this, is that time is fleeting, time is flying. This king may be a little bit concerned with the passage of time. That time is either running out or moving too quickly. So we do get just a hint of that potential for overwhelm here in this card as well. But I saw something else here. And we'll get to that something else here in just a moment. But first, let's see what this king has behind them and below them. What is this king carrying forward? What is this king not been through so much, but what are the experiences of this king? And let's start with the Seven of Discs. Yes. Because I think we want to read this spread right to left. The line of gaze is right to left. And though I started with the center card, I still think we want to read right to left. So let's start off with this beautiful Seven of Discs. That angel down there is just so precious, right? We see 5 discs above, surrounding the head of perhaps a steer, maybe, or maybe a horse? No. I'd say perhaps a steer of some sort. The skull of a steer. And then below that we have the angel, right? So we could have the idea of the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew, maybe. Wait a second, John. The Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of John, if you're biblically Christian. But we also have that idea of the 2 beneath the 5, right? Which is an interesting thing because the 5 would be experimentation. It would be exploration of the material, finding new ways of creating, breaking out of the structure of the 4 to do something new, right? So we have that. In addition to the 2 below, the 2 is balance and figuring out what to do with new opportunities. There's a balance of dichotomies here. There's a positive and there's an active and a receptive, a positive and a negative that are being balanced here by this angel down at the bottom. So we've got the breakthrough and the breakout and the experimentation and exploration, and a sense of balance in this 7 as well, right? Which are ways that the King of Discs can be in the world if they are feeling stable, if they're not feeling overwhelmed. And the 7 of Discs for me is community wealth. The 7s are our bringing our element, whatever that element is, disc, wand, sword, cup, out into the community. So community wealth. Also, ideas that move into action and produce more money. Integrating into systems while keeping our individuality. Now, we're part of a group, but we are our own selves too. We're not lost to the groupthink, you know? Also, sometimes something new is well received here. And maybe that well-received new thing is this new thing here received in a balanced way. We also have the idea of acceptance, the spiritualization of matter, and the materialization of spirit. Yeah? Spirit becomes matter, and matter becomes spirit here. So there's that interplay of both the physical and the non-physical, which can be part of this communal card. And the community not only of the king's realm, but also the greater community of all consciousness, coming into matter and then returning to non-physical. And it's interesting because this Seven of Discs card, not this Seven of Discs card, but the Seven of Discs appeared twice in the larger spread for this week. It appeared on the pillar of severity, the mother pillar, in two spots, in Gevra and Hod. Now, Gevra is the pillar of, is the Sephira of severity, of limitations, of cutting things off, but also of giving shape and form to the loving kindness of, what is the previous Sephira? It is Hesed, and I get, now I'm getting these two confused. Hesed and, let's see, just a second. Kether, Hesed, Binah, Hokmah. Hokmah. So, what I was trying to say was Gevra gives shape and form to the loving kindness of Hokmah. So, one way to give form to things is here in the Seven of Discs, with creating wealth for the community, of breaking free of structured forms of structured forms into the new, into new ways of creating wealth for self and community, both of the this is just going so weird, both of the materialization of non-physical and also the spiritualization of the physical. And all of this being well received, right, in Gevra. But we also had this card in the spot right below Gevra in Hod, which is the Sephira of surrendering to obstacles in order to move past them. Now, Hod is it's victory in a sense, but it's the victory of surrender. Does that make sense to you? And so the way that we surrender to whatever obstacles may present themselves is also by feeding the community. Yeah, is also by our ideas moving into action to produce more money. Instead of fighting against the obstacle, we let our ideas be creative. And we integrate into the system that exists rather than trying to struggle against it, perhaps. So, the king is bringing this forward with him, her, them. And they're also working from a base of the Four of Discs, right? Which is conservation. The king is conservative in a forward-moving way. Now, moving forward, but bringing the stability of what they have with them, right? So here we want to have this Four of Discs here. Conservation, creating security, frugality, stability, a stable home, stable health, and also that the working order is assured by not letting assets stagnate, right? Even in this four, the four is not one of lock it all up in a box and never open it up again. Now, this is a stability of flow, of interchange, of things coming out as much as they are coming in. Yeah? Otherwise, whatever that asset is, whether it's cash, whether it's food, whether it's our health, if we try to just freeze things in space-time, they start to stagnate and crumble and die. We want a healthy, active system of interaction and flow. And that's also part of this card. But you also notice at the bottom of this card, there are instruments, right? There's a creativity here. There's a joy of stability. There's a potential festivity. Yeah, we see garlands around those four discs above. There's a festivity, a joyful enjoyment of the things that we have here in the four as well. And there's a creativity as well here too, right? And this creativity here, I think, is what is going to bring us into the card that the King of Discs is facing. So we want to keep these instruments down here in mind as we move on to that thing I said I wanted to touch back upon here. So those are the two things that this king is bringing forward with him, her, or them. And remember, the king is looking up at this disc, which looks like an hourglass with wings. However, when I saw that disc this time, instead of seeing an hourglass with wings, what I saw was the Ace of Cups. Which is interesting, because remember, in that 7 of discs, we had that idea of the material becoming non-physical spiritual, and the spirit becoming material, right? Ace of Cups, what is the Ace of Cups? It's love. It's new love, of course, but it's also fresh connection with spirit. It's the cup of the Holy Grail. It's the cup where the dove, remember, you see the wings here. Yeah, in some decks, and a lot of decks, there's a dove. The Holy Spirit is coming down to feed the Ace of Cups. So there's a spiritual connection there that I think the king is also looking towards and hoping for, perhaps. Yeah, love, spiritual connection. That's what I think this king wants to move towards. What is on this king's mind. And so the next card for us is, where are you? The King of Wands, right? A very stable, clear-looking King of Wands. Very nicely dressed, standing upright, holding a staff of power in one arm and a walking staff, a baton in another, right? But this walking staff is a festive staff. You see that ribbon just dancing in the air. And so this king, I think, is the one that connects back to that group of instruments at the bottom of the 4 of discs. Yeah, those 4 instruments are what feed this King of Wands, who the King of Discs wants to become, where this King of Discs wants to move into. The King of Discs wants to embody his, her, or their inner King of Wands. Who is the King of Wands? The King of Wands is the one who has the big picture as a leader. Yeah? Has a broader, stronger, more powerful vision of what is possible, what he, she, or they can create in the world, larger than the King of Discs. And that's the direction that the King of Discs in this spread wants to move in, overcoming challenges. Also, mastering the energy and its vital, creative, sexual power. Sexuality connected to the love portion of that Ace of Cups we just thought of. Also, creative, vital power of spirit coming into matter, right? This king is the sincere lover warrior. Kind of like a King Arthur figure, right? Right. Saying right a lot, aren't I? So yes, the King of Wands, the King of Discs wants to walk into his inner King of Wands-ness. And where would that bring the King of Discs? That will bring the King of Discs into the Four of Swords. And the Four of Swords is stable mind, right? It's the stability, the structure given to mind. Oh, I didn't mention, just a moment. I did not mention this. The King of Wands, let's go back up a little bit. Going in reverse. The King of Wands here. This King of Wands, the King of Wands showed up in the larger spread as well. So we had 3 cards from this 5-card spread that were in the larger spread for this week. Now we have the King of Discs at the top. We had the 7 of Discs in both Gevra and Hod. And then we had the King of Wands in Netzach. And Netzach is the partner to Hod. Netzach is the Sephirah of victory over obstacles. Hod is the surrender to the obstacle in order to flow around, over, through, around it. Netzach is the one that is victorious over obstacles. So the way that we could be victorious over our obstacles there was this. And so it was even more significant that this card showed up in this spread, giving us the clear message of that larger Tree of Life spread. Now the King of Discs wants to move into that victory over the obstacles of that imminent overwhelm. And so the King of Wands, here, the message is looking at the Four of Swords, which I just took away. Here we go. The Four of Swords, which is, again, structured mind, right? Organized and stable intellect. Rationalism, thinking clearly. Conservation, the conservation of ideas, the conservation of thought, the conservation of communication and our ability to communicate. Analysis and thinking systematically, thinking our way through things. Taking caution. We don't want to go, this isn't the time to leap into the unknown. This is the time to stop and think. And again, and analyze. Get our thoughts in order. Which is interesting, because in the larger spread for this week, that King of Discs reversed moved into our understanding of Chokmah, which was the 9 of Wands. You're saying 9 of Wands, what does that have to do with the 4 of Swords? Doesn't really, except in the 9 of Wands in that disc, in that deck, we have animals taking shelter in a cave, figuring out how they can interrelate. And then we move from that 9 of Wands into the Devil card, which in that deck is the joining. It's the solve and coagula. It's the dissolving of elements in order to bring them together into one new being. Which is kind of that idea of as we've taken shelter, we start to analyze, we start to organize and find our stability. Instead of this dichotomy of struggle against each other, that each other could be me and you, it could be me within me, aspects of self. And probably it is aspects of self. Now that struggle between aspects of self, we find a safe space for ourselves to organize and find stability within, which is that coagula of Solve and Coagula. Now we've got all this stuff that's just that's not getting along, that we're holding together in our hands. And so what we do is we let it go, we let it all fall on the table, dissolve it, and then we organize it and bring it back together in some kind of stable form, coagula. And we do that, this is a suggested intellectual process. So that's what this spread was telling us. Yeah, the King of Discs is coming forth with the 7 of discs and the 4 of discs, and is moving into wants to move into their inner King of Wands, but with a mind towards discovering mental stability. And the only thing that we were really missing from this spread was a cup. And yet, what I saw in this card was that Ace of Cups floating in the eyesight of the King of Discs. So really, maybe nothing is missing. Does that make sense? I hope it does. It kind of makes sense to me. And it kind of makes sense as a core message for this week's larger Tree of Life spread. That we come with all of this stuff, this potential, but still a potential for overwhelm. And so we can move into our power and get our heads together, right? So friends, here we are. If you're still here, hit that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of it and other people might get something out of it. It brings more eyes to the channel. It puts the channel in front of more people. It helps the channel. So I appreciate your thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. I do 3 a week these days. I do 3 a week these days. It looks like this is going to be the trend perhaps for the rest of the semester. We'll see. Also, comment below. I would love to hear from you. What do you think? And if you want a reading from me, either with Tarot de Marseille, Tarot de Marseille adjacent, Antique Italian decks, or the Smith-Waite deck, or a Thoth deck, or something else, whatever you want, I'm here for you. My email address is below. thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. So shoot me an email, we'll get you a reading. And friends, if you want this deck, it's still available. I'll put the link for Il Meneghello down in the description box so you can go out and check out their decks and perhaps get this one or one of their other beautiful offerings. So friends, here we are. And now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.